Warwick Baines, the subject convener again. Just a short video to step you through a few key things to think about when preparing for your first case study assessment task. That's Case Study A. If you're studying online, it's due 20th of August, and if you're in a study centre campus, it's due 27th of August. So either way, not too far away. Now, although it's only worth 15%, it pays to put the effort in. Not only is it good preparation for the exam, a good mark in the first assessment task could be the difference between a pass and a fail grade at the end of the session. The important thing to remember is that if you're up to date with your studies as per the study schedule for the first couple of weeks of session, then you've covered all you need to cover for this assessment task. If you're not up to date, make sure you get up to date on topics 1, 2 and 3 as soon as possible. Remember that whilst this assessment task is based on the one case study at the one auditing firm, that's Miller Yates Horwath, and at the one client, that's Morgan Fertilizers, the two questions deal with different issues. First one's an ethical issue, second one's a legal liability issue. So when you're preparing your report, make sure you address the two questions separately. Now we're going to have a look at each question, but before you get too carried away, let me be clear that I'm not about to give you model answers. I'm merely pointing out things for you to think about. Okay, question 1, as you can see, is a pretty standard ethical case study from topic 2. Now there are a few ethical decision models in the textbook, but you can see the question clearly states that you are to use the American Accounting Association model to answer the question, so don't use any other model. One tip is to keep the section about the facts brief and to the point. You don't need to restate every sentence in the question. As the marking criteria makes clear, a high distinction response will be one that contains a detailed and considered thinking rather than just responses copied straight from the textbook and placed under the correct subheadings. To get an idea of how you to answer the question, look in the textbook on pages 101 to 102. That gives you some tips on what to consider under each of the headings, and have a go at some practice questions in the textbook that also require you to use the AAA model. Questions 3.19 and questions 3.20 on pages 135 and 136 are good practice questions. And one other thing to think about, the marking criteria for the whole assessment task expects correct referencing. So for this question, there's not an expectation that you reference an ethical or auditing standard or even a piece of legislation under every subheading. It may only be relevant for one section, most commonly the major principles, rules and values section. This legal liability question is focusing on the strength of any negligence case that Oasis might bring against MYH. Now this includes potential liability to third parties. In terms of preparation to answer this question, there are numerous cases in Chapter 2 that cover the same area as negligence and liability to third parties as this question does. When it comes to practicing similar questions from the textbook, question 2.26 on page 89 is a good one on negligence, and question 2.30 is a good one on third-party liability. That's on the next page. Now, as per the marking criteria, a high distinction response needs to provide a comprehensive synthesis and critical evaluation of the common law. That essentially means you need to integrate the findings from the most relevant cases you find into your well-considered arguments, not simply cut and paste information from the text. Now you'll note that the required section of the question requires you to reference relevant case law. So make sure you do it, and make sure, as per the marking criteria, that the case law is referenced correctly. Finally, a couple of points in relation to the whole assessment task. Although you're answering two separate questions, you are to submit one report and note the expectations of professional communication in the marking criteria. And it's to have one executive summary. And you're advising your managing partner, as per the question here, not me, your lecturer, or anyone else in the question. So make sure you write your report from that perspective. Now the final point I want to make is in relation to word count. The question clearly says that the word count is 2,000 words. So make sure you stick to it. The questions should roughly be about 1,000 words each, and that's it for now. All the best.